Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here on this Wednesday. Wednesday, it's the 6th of September 2023. Thank you for tuning in. Now, here's the thing. We're going to get into this and take a look at something. First thing we're going to take a look at is what the Chinese tourists are engaging in. They're getting in close to these United States bases, and they're gathering intelligence. It says there's a series of instances here which are being dubbed low-level Chinese intelligence collection efforts, often involving Chinese nationals posing as tourists who attempt to gain access to military bases in the United States. Now, do you remember that balloon that flew over? It flew over the most strategic places of our missiles out in the Midwest. And it flew over at a high altitude, and it was taking pictures and stuff. And it goes on to say here about this is that U.S. officials have tracked a dramatic increase in these incidents, citing that they've occurred as many as 100 times in the recent period in time. It says in the recent years. These episodes have been called gate crashing incidents. The Defense Department, FBI, and other agencies held a review last year to try to limit these incidents, which involves people whom officials have dubbed gate crashers because of their attempts, either by accident or intentionally, to get into U.S. military bases and other installations without proper authorization. It says they range from Chinese nationals found crossing into U.S. missile range in New Mexico, and what appeared to be a scuba diver swimming in murky waters near a United States government rocket launch facility in Florida. So they caught a guy scuba diving, swimming in the murky waters near a U.S. government rocket launch site in Florida. It says a group of Chinese nationals claiming they were tourists tried to push past guards at Fort Wainwright in Alaska, saying they had reservations at a commercial hotel on the base. Anyway, this is all very sordid, but it's all part of war. This is what the enemy does if they... See, I know we're not at war with China right now. And I know we're not at war with Russia, technically, right now. But Russia and China are in an alliance together. And it's moving toward war. And these could be advanced preparations of them wanting to know what we got. And how effective it's going to be at fighting against them. It's spying on the enemy. They consider us to be the enemy, and honest to God, they're going to spy on us and see what we got. That's what they're up to. Taking a look at this. It says we are not delivering... Okay, it says we are not delivering the results. Now, this is a different subject. This is the global warming and stuff. And they're saying they're not delivering the results. COP28 president says the world is losing the race to meet climate goals. It's just 3 days until the United Nations publishes the first ever global stocktake, which would assess how nations are doing with their efforts to tackle climate change. It says the world is losing the race to meet its climate change goals, the president of the upcoming COP28 climate summit said on Tuesday. He spoke as African presidents gathered in Kenya to discuss how to fund the continent's environmental agenda. A grim assessment by Sultan Al-Jaber, who will preside over the summit in the United Arab Emirates in late November, came 3 days before the United Nations publishes its first global stocktake. Let's take a look at this. Now, here's another thing right here. Talking about the same subject, climate change. The Arctic tundra is leaking greenhouse gases on an unbelievable scale. It says a profound change appears to be sweeping the landscape above the Arctic Circle. North Alaska's tundra is warming up, perhaps because of local climate change. As it warms, it is releasing more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere than it is soaking up, according to a report. The annual meeting of the American Geophysical Union in San Francisco this week, the findings suggest that a sustained global warming because of human activity could unleash a flood of carbon dioxide from the Arctic tundra. Well, I don't doubt climate change, but just exactly what's causing it, I'm not so sure. But I do know it's happening. For crying out loud, I see the people out there that were stranded, 73,000 of them were stranded in a desert. Desert. Get the word desert? Well, how come the place turned into a lake? Never happened before. I mean, every time they went out there, it's always been dusty and dry, and they get. I've seen so many pictures of previous. This is why they go out there. They don't go out there to be in a giant mud puddle. So I don't doubt climate change, but just exactly what's causing it. And this climate change is taking the effect of storms when there never used to be storms. Rivers that always had water in them starting to dry up. Other places, new rivers are forming. Something's going on. Big time. And why we're talking about this is because this Arctic tundra, this leaking greenhouse gas, is going to start to leak, from what I understand, massive amounts of. And we got no control over that. That greenhouse gas that comes out of that Arctic tundra, out of that mud, when it starts to melt and the ice starts to draw back, pumps out unbelievable amounts. It says they're trying to trace the whereabouts of the carbon monoxide, methane, and other gases in the environment around the National Science Foundation's Toolik Lake Research Station on Alaska's northern slope. Previous field seasons have shown that the tundra, which is the summertime, is a patchwork of soggy tussocks and meltwater lakes, is saturated like a wet sponge with carbon dioxide and methane. What we didn't know is just how much carbon is entering the atmosphere through contact with surface waters. In the latest field season, the gas flux team gathered data and fed it into a computer model describing how carbon is stored and released into the permafrost marshes in the Kaparak watershed area. In an 8,100 square kilometer area that includes Toolik Lake, they found that about 2.5 grams of carbon per square meter is now entering the atmosphere as carbon dioxide and methane. Previous studies have shown that for thousands of years the Arctic tundra was a carbon sink. Scientists are concerned that this trickle of greenhouse gases may represent the first cracks in a dam, as the Arctic tundra stores an estimated 180 billion metric tons of carbon. You get that? 180 billion metric tons of carbon. So when the permafrost starts to melt back and it starts to get warm up there in the Arctic tundra, all of that carbon's going to get released. 180 billion metric tons of it. Now, how does that compare with our production of carbon? That's what I want to know. Do we produce 180 billion metric tons of carbon? Because that sounds like an awful lot to me. You know, and what's the net effect of that going to be? Is that going to... well, let's take a look, see what happens here. Because they've got charts going back for thousands of years. Where is it here? Uh, oh, that's something else I had on there. Where's that chart I had? Oh, here it is. The historical chart. Now, I don't altogether buy into the time frames at the bottom. They show these scientists they will throw a few million years around like it's nothing. You know, they'll say, "Oh, that shark's tooth, it's 100 million years old." They don't know how old it is. They know how long a million years is. It's 1,000 years. And they'll just throw it around like, toss it around like it's nothing. Oh, it's 100 million. Or another scientist come along, he says it's 80 million. Now, the other guy says 100. Well, that's a 20 million difference, for crying out loud. Which one's right? And neither one of them are right, because they don't have a clue how long ago. They just say. But what they do know about is what happened in these lengths of time. So this chart is showing what happened, and that's correct. They can see it in the ice core samples right here. And they can see that the Earth goes through a period, and the temperatures are correct too. They got the temperatures correct, just the years here. I don't buy into the years, the amount of years they say. But I do buy into they got these temperatures correct, and they can see it in the ice. I buy this, that they can see it in the ice core samples, these warming periods. And what you see on this chart is, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these warming periods, global warming, 5 of them, going back what they say 400,000 years, but it might only be 40,000 years or 50,000. They just don't know the time frame. They don't know exactly. But what they do know is they can see it in the ice cores, 5 of these going back in the ice core samples of the same event occurring over and over and over again. So it's a cyclical event. And it warms up. Look, the Earth warms up to 4 degrees higher than Celsius. Now, that's in Fahrenheit, it would be more. But in Celsius, see, 1 degree Fahrenheit, 1 degree Celsius is like, I think it's 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that. So 4 degrees Celsius is a lot. In Fahrenheit, it'd be like 20 degrees difference. All right? And what we see here is the temperature shoots up over a period of time, hotter and hotter and hotter until it reaches a crescendo. And during that period in time, it probably releases this methane gas from the ice. The permafrost melts and it releases that 180 billion tons of methane gas into the atmosphere. And it probably did it on each one of these spikes. You see these shoots upward where the temperature gets up to its crescendo, which is about 4 degrees Celsius hotter than normal. Maybe three, depending on the event, 3 to 4 degrees hotter than normal in Celsius from our normal temperatures. But each and every time here, what does it do? When it reaches that crescendo, it drops sharply afterwards. From global warming to global cooling. And one other thing I notice here on this chart is after it reaches that crescendo, how fast does it drop? Well, we got evidence for that. They found everywhere, frozen in the tundra, they find these mastodons and stuff they've been flash frozen. So it gets hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter, and then some event comes along and flash freezes everything. What the hell is that? It's almost like a giant storm or something. Flash freezes everything. So it gets hotter and hotter and hotter, and all the mastodons are out there, dancing around having a party. Oh, it's so lovely today. It's 90 degrees out, and it's steamy, and then all of a sudden, boom, everything turns to ice. It stays for ice for a long time. And you can see that's these drops on the other side of this when it reaches the peak, and it falls like a stone, the temperature. So how cold does it get? Well, it goes from 4 degrees Celsius hotter than normal, which is probably about 20 or 30 degrees hotter Fahrenheit than normal. It drops all the way down to about 6 degrees Celsius below the normal average. Or maybe even 8 degrees Celsius below the normal average. And we're talking Celsius here, that's big time. So I mean, do we expect this chart, this event here to be different than all the other 5 times it happened in the past? Probably not. We're going through the exact same event. And right now it's getting pretty damn hot. The ice is starting to melt up in the north. In places, we're getting near the culmination of this thing. And what's going to happen after the culmination? Man, you better have your coats. You better have your boots. You better have a thick warm jacket or a coat. You better have some source of heat. Because what comes after this, if this chart is anything in anything over the last number of times it's happened, we're in for it. That's all I can say. The permafrost might be as far south as the Mason-Dixon line. Can you imagine? The ice, the snow 30 feet deep in Texas is not melting until June every year. And to get south of that, you'd have to go all the way down someplace. In other words, the northern hemisphere would just about be, unless you know how to live like an Eskimo, the northern hemisphere would just be like, unless you're going to feed on polar bears all year and live in an igloo. Anyway, that's what might be what we're in for. I mean, the world is a change in place. But that's just going by this chart. We see this event, 1, 2, 3, there's 5 of them here. We're in this last one right here. And you can see by the height of the top and the peaking, it doesn't last, the heat doesn't last long. Just a few years, and then boom, the cold roars in like a lion. So what triggers the cold to roar in like a lion? Well, I'll tell you what I think does it. I think it's something called the AMOC, the Atlantic Circulation, what they used to call the Gulf Stream. I think it stops at a certain point. And that's when the whole thing trips, the switch trips, and everything goes the opposite way. And the financial market's doing the exact same thing. Right now, the dollar's staying strong. We're headed toward deflation, actually, if it continues in this direction. But it's going to flip and switch and go in the opposite direction. And pretty darn soon. Let's get in there and take a look at silver today. 23.13. It's down 38 cents on the day so far. Taking a look at gold today. Gold is $19.17. It's down $8. Now, cryptocurrencies is not doing so good. Bitcoin's at 25,619. Ethereum is at 1622, and XRP's 49.7 cents. Dow Jones Industrial Average today is down 270 points. Now, this could be whenever it starts to go down several days in a row now, I'm going to be saying to myself, is this the one? Because we're getting so close to the time it's going to be the one. We're getting so close. This can't hold up much longer. Credit's being shut off too much. And it's going to trip the switch. And when we see these bonds, especially the 10-year, start to rise up a little bit higher than it is right now, the whole thing's going to start to come apart, it seems. Taking a look at crude oil today is 87.38. It's up 69 cents. Bonds and rates today. We are looking at rising yields on the 10 years up 2 basis points. 2.4 basis points at 4.29 and the 30 years at 4.36. Taking a look at the US dollar index, 104.83. Climate change is here. It's for real. And it occurs it occurs cyclically in the world. It's occurred all the way through history. They can see it. They know that it's a cyclical thing. And we're in the bad period right now, I think, when there's going to be rapid changes, possibly extreme changes that, depending on where you're at, might not even be survivable. When's it going to happen? Well, when you're talking thousands and thousands of years in Earth history, I mean, to say, okay, an event's here. Boom, it's here. When you're talking about an event that is occurring on the time scale, such a large time scale of the Earth's history, just because you're at the period where it's supposed to be here, in other words, you're waiting at the bus station for the person to show up, and they're 10 minutes late. Well, maybe this will be 10 minutes late, but 10 minutes will be a year for a minute. So it might be 10 years from now. But we're very close. It might be next year. But we're seeing the not gradual effects, but profound effects of climate change right now. And this means we're very, very close to this devastating event that they can see. And it scares them to even talk about it, because it's when the Earth goes through these geological and these enormous changes, periods in very short order, there can be tremendously devastating effects. Things like crustal displacement, things like tidal waves, enormous tidal waves, earthquakes that are up to a 10 on the Richter scale, storms that exceed our greatest expectations of what a hurricane can become. Ice and snow that can get so deep that it crushes the roof of your house. And you can't even breathe. You step outside the door, you open up your door to go outside, and there's just all snow up 20 feet deeper, higher than the roof of your house. You need a snorkel just to get water into air into your house. You need to dig a tunnel up to the surface. This is the kind of weather we could see. Because right here where I live, the ice used to be 30 feet deep. What happens is, if you live in an area where the snow doesn't melt year-round, the snow comes down that compacts underneath new fresh snow, and it turns to ice. And then new fresh snow comes, and that snow that came down turns to ice again, and the ice keeps getting thicker and thicker and thicker. And in the end, it just crushes. Everything's buried underneath the ice. Whole civilizations in the past may have been buried underneath the ice, and maybe they still haven't even thawed out. In places like Antarctica. So you're living on people think that this is a stable planet, but it's actually not. It's a very unstable planet that we live on. And humans are very adaptable and good at survival, but sometimes it takes a lot to survive what the Earth will throw at you. Thank you guys for listening to my show. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.